helps me a lot. So hopefully, this offseason we find a way to get better and, add some pieces. And,
add some pieces.
The Philadelphia 76ers now have a new big three. After not making it past the second round in the Embiid era, they have decided to go all in this season, signing the biggest free agent in the class. Philly has been looking for a third star after Tyrese Maxey has officially established himself as a franchise player alongside Joel Embiid, who is a former MVP. Let's take a deeper dive into why the Sixers decided to land on Paul George. The Sixers have been in limbo in the past few seasons, as Embiid and Tyrese Maxey have both been stars in their own right, but with Embiid dealing with injuries, they have missed out on having a third reliable guy. This started when Tobias Harris was brought in to be that guy, but that had not worked out the way the Sixers had hoped. Harris wasn't bad, but he wasn't the piece that put them over the top like they thought. At the same time, they had Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler, and as we know, Jimmy Butler is not on the team. He was only there for half a season, and Ben Simmons completely fell off of the map. They thought that they could get this player back next with James Harden, but that didn't work as well as they thought it would either. After last season, Tyrese Maxey has officially shown that he can be a star in this league, making the All-Star game and winning Most Improved Player, and the Sixers knew they would have to build around Embiid and Maxey now, having two established stars. And going into this offseason, everyone around Philadelphia knew that they were going to have a lot of money to play with, as it was almost a guarantee unless Tobias Harris decided to return to his prime form and maybe even he would have to put up 25 points per game or something like that. Tobias Harris would be out of the door. There was really no chance he was going to stay. And with that being said, the Sixers would have a lot of money as he was getting a max contract. So they would have a new max contract slot where they could go out and get a big star. And Paul George was the biggest star in this year's free agency class. As we know, LeBron James was the biggest star in a sense, but it was almost obvious after they drafted Bronny, after they brought in JJ Redick, that he was going to stay in Los Angeles. So I wouldn't really consider LeBron, even though he was a free agent, I don't think he was really obtainable for the 76ers. Paul George was the biggest accusation they could get in this whole free agency, and they went out and got it done with some other smaller pieces too that can definitely help this team, like Andre Drummond, but overall, the biggest signing was Paul George for this team, and he finally fits in that role of being that wing guy and being a two-way player, which is what they needed. Tobias Harris, not the best defensive player for the Sixers during his time period, and only really putting up 15 points per game. Now, if we look at Paul George, he had his healthiest season last year that he has had since the 2019 season with the Thunder, which was arguably his best season of his career. If we look at the stats, I don't really see any argument outside of that where he was top 3, top 5 in MVP voting by the end of the year. So, if he could return to that form, which would be very tough, obviously, as he would be the second or third option depending on how we see Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid play. But Joel Embiid is going to be the number one option. A former MVP, this guy was putting up 36 points per game last season. I don't think that's up for debate, but if Tyrese Maxey and Paul George can mesh together, they now have three star-level players at the three different levels of the court. You have the point guard, you have that wing, and then you have the center playing inside of the block. All three of these guys are going to be fantastic as they can all shoot inside and outside. As we have seen, Tyrese Maxey has developed that three-point shot, and it has been fantastic for him. Joel Embiid can make threes when he needs to. He also has some of the best footwork that we've seen from a center all time. He can make a shot anywhere. And Paul George is a good threat anywhere on the court. I mean, this guy is a two-way weapon. And last season, like I said, playing 74 games, a big reason why the Sixers wanted to go in on him. As the past few seasons, he struggled. When he was with the Clippers, playing 48 games, 54 games, 31 games, 56 games. Last season, playing 74 games. If he was only in that 30 to 40 games last season, I think the Sixers might have taken a second look at him, and maybe he wouldn't even have gone to the team in the first place, maybe going in a different direction just because he couldn't stay healthy. But last year, proving that he can stay healthy. So, going all in on Paul George. And like I said, with the past few players that have been on the Sixers in the past few years, there has been a struggle because Ben Simmons, a very good defensive player at the time, one of the best in the league, struggled offensively. So they only had one side to work with. Tobias Harris, 15 points per game. He was a good enough scorer, but he wasn't good enough offensively, and he wasn't good enough defensively to set them over the edge. And then James Harden, who was fantastic, 25 and 10 at one point, should have been an all-star that year, but defensively was a liability, and with Tyrese Maxey back there not being the greatest defender either, though he's very fast and skilled, he's not the best defender by any means. So Paul George comes in and fits that quota of being a good defensive player while also being able to put up nearly 25 points per game. The way that I look at the Sixers depth chart right now, as it is still early in free agency as I'm recording this on July 4th, is they have a pretty good lineup right now before they really sign those depth players that I'm sure they're going to go out and get right now. But this starting 5 or 6, 7, whatever you want to put it to, is a very good rotation, assuming someone maybe gets hurt. But there's definitely still more places they have to look at. But starting at the point guard position, Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain, who they drafted in the first round this year from Duke. McCain was a fantastic player, really stepped it up in the second half of the season and proved that he can be a good player in the NBA and can help a NBA contender really have a good guy coming off the bench, shooting, passing, whatever he needs to do. Now, at the shooting guard position, this is where it's a little thinner right now. Eric Gordon starting, Ricky Council, the fourth, who played fantastic last year in some of his minutes. He had some great outings when he finally got onto the court towards the end of the year. After this, we have the small forward position. The forwards right now with Kelly Oubre, Paul George, I'm assuming the two starters, and then Paul Reed coming off the bench. They still definitely need some work in that area, as I fully expect the Sixers to go out and get another power forward to start for this team, as maybe Paul Reed gets traded, maybe they go out for another forward, but I do think Oubre and Paul George are probably both going to start. Depending on who they get, if it's a good enough power forward, maybe a guy that is good enough defensively and can go out there and shoot threes as well, I wouldn't be surprised if Oubre gets pushed to the bench just because he is a very good sixth man, and right now I don't really see a good enough sixth man on this team, but like I said, they're still going to go out there and get those depth guys. And then in the center position, signing Andre Drummond I think was a fantastic move, as he can go out there and get rebounds. He can put up some points when he needs to, and if Embiid misses some games this year, whether he's injured or not, maybe if he just takes some rest, obviously, as he is injury prone, he's not going to go out there and play 82 games all season. I'd be very happy with Andre Drummond going in there as a starting center because he's still young, relatively young. A lot of people think that Andre Drummond's a lot older than he is. He's still only 30 years old, so he can still be a very productive piece for this team. And as of right now, this starting lineup looks good. There is still some room to work with, as they need to go out there and get some more depth guys. I don't know how good Jared McCain's going to be in his first season. I have relatively high expectations for him, but I don't expect him to be a 15-point per game guy in his rookie season at all. I think if he could crack double digits, that would be a fantastic for the whole Sixers team this year, but I would say he's probably going to be around that 6 or 7 points per game, just because I'm not exactly sure how many minutes he's going to play right away. But either way, the Sixers team looks very good right now and can easily contest with those teams in the East. I think we're quick to forget how good Joel Embiid can be, as he brought this team to a number 1 seed by himself at one point, and he can go out there when he's healthy. They finally have their third star, as Tyrese Maxey has officially become a 25 points per game guy. Paul George can go out there and get them buckets as well. So once they get some depth, they're definitely going to be competing with these teams, as a lot of the teams in the East right now, the Celtics re-signing pretty much everyone on their team as they just won a championship. But other teams like the Bucks haven't made very many moves yet, if any. So I think the Sixers can easily compete this year. We'll have to see what happens with the rest of this roster, but an injury-free Sixers team, which would knock on wood, but I'm sure someone is going to have an injury bug, but if Embiid can be healthy for a full season, this team is definitely going to be dangerous this year. Let me know down below how you guys think this Sixers team is going to do in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.